Good morning. Oh, that was nice. Welcome to Second Unitarian Church. I'm Megan Dunning, a member of the Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are she and hers. Today, we are in person at the Admiral at the Lake, here in the 2U Sanctuary, and continuing to meet virtually via Zoom. We're asking everyone's indulgence for the complications of a three-part service. We're glad you're here, whichever way you're attending. If you're in the sanctuary and would benefit from hearing assistance, we have devices available, and please see Dan in the back. We are currently seeing both a national and global surge in COVID numbers. We're encouraging people to wear masks during the service. This practice prevents transmission of the virus and helps us center the needs of those who are most vulnerable. And if you find you'd like to pick one up, there are some at the welcome table. We especially welcome newcomers and visitors this morning. Finding a new community, making new connections can be challenging. Please know that we're excited to have you, and we're looking forward to getting to know you. If you're new to us today, please note that in the Zoom chat, or mention it in person during conversation after the service. And if you'd like, there are blue mugs you can pick up during coffee hour to signal to others to come up and say hello. We also always need people in the kitchen after coffee hour, and that's a great place to see old friends and make new ones. Our worship today is led by Reverend Jason Lydon, along with Jill Althage as worship associate. Music is provided by John Hoke, Brandon Nix, and our director of music, Carl Kennedy. Our time together requires a large group of people who make possible the worship, the music, and the technical production. They are listed in the order of service, and we thank them for their ongoing service to the congregation and the joy they bring us all. I have a couple of announcements for you this morning. Tomorrow, our social justice ministry team will be volunteering at the community jail support outside of Cook County Jail from 5:30 to 8 p.m., and more hands are always needed. Please let Eli Sander, Joy Messenger, or Reverend Jason know if you have any questions. It is a great way to get to know others in the church. It is a very meaningful way to support people who are being released from jail. There will be a gathering of young adults, 18 to 35, in Fleischman Hall downstairs after coffee hour on Sunday, October 1st. This will be a gathering with Reverend Jason to determine what we want to do this year for spiritual connection, friendship building, and deepening ties to the church. Please join us. Lunch will be provided. Lastly, our fall orientation for new members is coming up. If you have been visiting the congregation for a little bit and want to consider membership, we would love to have you and love to share more about that. This is a 3-session process that starts on October 1st. Judy Corbet would love to answer questions for you. You can see her waving if you're in the sanctuary. And you can sign up via the link in the anvil or by talking with someone at the welcome table. I now welcome Jill to lead our call to worship.
We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but the values we share. Whether you are joining us for the first time or for the 1000th time, you are welcome here. You are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you are welcome here. Whatever your race, whomever you love, whichever way you move in the world, however much money is in your pocket, you are welcome here. I invite you now to, or when you feel ready, to take a breath in and out. As the music begins, let us enter into our service together.
In just a moment, Marion here in the sanctuary and Harris at the Admiral will light our chalices, the symbol of our faith. And we light our chalices this morning with these words from Reverend Monica Jacobson Tennyson. Welcome. What you bring, who you are, enriches us all. We say welcome to your joy, your hope, your pride. We say welcome to your grief, your fear, your anger, and the parts of you that are not yet ready to be seen and heard. Welcome, welcome to them all. Marianne, would you light our chalice, please?
As today is the first day of our RA classes for this year, I would like to wish our youngest folks a wonderful start to their classes. Let's wish that their minds and hearts open like a rose, that their fears are burned away, and that their wings will unfurl. So I invite you now to rise in body and spirit and join me in singing our opening hymn, number 396, I Know This Rose Will Open. I know this rose will open. I know my fears will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fears will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open.
Covenant. The words are on your screen or in your order of service. We covenant to build a community that challenges us to grow and empowers us to honor the truth within ourselves. We will be generous with our gifts and honest in our communication, holding faithful to a love that embraces both diversity and conflict. Called by our living tradition, we will nurture spirituality within a vision of the eternal, living out our inner convictions through struggles for justice and acts of compassion.
Now please stay standing as we sing our congregational hymn, Spirit of Life. Compassion, oh, in
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to invite all of the children and children at heart to the front of the room for a time for all ages. All right, everybody. So today is our first day of religious education for the school year. It's our first day of Sunday school. And I am so excited for us to get into all this learning and exploration together. So I'm going to invite you to remove the top of the Wonder Box and see what we have to guide our thinking this morning. Go for it. What do you see? What's that, Lumi?
Wait, I think I had this at home.
Do you? Do you know what it is? What is it? You check where you go. It's called a compass. That's right. It's called a compass. It tells you which way is north, south, east, west. It helps you travel. And what do you have, Sella?
A thing that can like change its shape. I don't know its name.
A telescope. Exactly. A mini telescope. Or Nolan was correcting me. He said it's a spyglass, but I think telescope suits my purposes a little better right now, so we'll go with telescope. And it helps you see things that are far away. It helps you see better. And June, what do you have that Marion was holding a moment ago? What is that? A mirror. What do mirrors help you do? It doesn't have to be June to answer. What do mirrors help you do? Go for it. See yourself. Yeah, absolutely. What's the last thing in our Wonder Box? A big question mark. Absolutely. So we have a telescope to help you see things far away, a mirror to help you see yourself, a compass to help you find your way, and a question mark. What do all of these things kind of have in common? It's a tricky question, but do you guys have any ideas? How do all of these objects connect to each other?
A sentence.
You could make a sentence with all of them, absolutely. Any other ideas? Or how a couple of the objects connect to each other? Oh, cool. All of these objects have to do with exploration and wondering. We're going to reflect on our own selves, explore our own identities. That's kind of what the mirror is all about. We're going to find our way as we figure out our values and our beliefs. That's what the telescope and the compass are all about, looking closely at things and finding our way. And all the while, we are going to ask so many questions. And I know all of you at least a little bit, and every single one of you in front of me is really good at asking questions. So with that, I want you all to take this spirit of questioning, wonder, and exploration with you as you head to your first religious education class for the school year. All right, let's go ahead and put the objects back in the Wonder Box. Thank you, Lumi. Thank you, June. And wonderful. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Zella. And then Malachi is ready with the lid. Beautiful. We are ready to ask questions, wonder, reflect, look closely, and explore. And with that, my friends, let's go ahead and sing the children to their first class.
So excited for Sunday school to start. What a joy for us as a whole church. So each year, we all make a commitment, a pledge to support the ministry of our congregation. In addition to this contribution that we make, we also take a collection every Sunday so that we can share with those who are doing justice work well beyond our church walls. For the month of September, we're sharing our plate with the Midwest Access Coalition, and you can make your contributions by following the text prompts that you'll see on the screen in a little bit, or also following the text prompts that you can see in your order of service. This morning, we have some virtual words from Joy Messenger. Hopefully they will join us soon. Do we have Joy online? We do. Oh, look at that.
Hooray, I am unmuted. Hello, everyone. Good morning. Happy Rosh Hashanah, a blessed Mabon next week. And to those who are observing Yom Kippur, I hope that you have an easy fast. My name is Joy Messenger. I use they, them for my pronouns. And for those who I haven't met yet, I'm one of the co-chairs of Social Justice Ministry and wanted to share some information about Midwest Access Coalition with you this morning. Before I do that, I wanted to thank everyone for your ongoing support for our plate share recipients. Last month, we raised over $900 for Chicago Community Jail support, who Megan mentioned at the beginning of services this morning. These funds will go towards bus cards and snacks and hygiene kits, which are especially important right now as Illinois becomes the first state in the country to eliminate cash bail, which will be going into effect tomorrow. And Social Justice Ministries will be on the ground with Chicago Community Jail support at Cook County Jail. Today is a reminder of our September and October plate share beneficiary, the Midwest Access Coalition. The Midwest Access Coalition is an organization that supports the Midwest, based here in Chicago as well as in the Twin Cities in Minnesota. And MAC envisions a world in which all people have safe, free, and legal abortion access wherever they live. MAC was founded in 2014 and has supported more than 5,000 people from 30 different states, which includes its clients traveling to or from Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Michigan, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, North Dakota, Ohio, South Dakota, and Wisconsin. So many states in the Midwest. The donations to this month and next month's plate share help support folks with travel coordination and costs like plane tickets, bus tickets, train tickets to get to or from Illinois, lodging, food while they're traveling to receive an abortion, any medicine they may need, child care, and other incidental costs that they might have when they're traveling away from home. I wanted to point your attention to the document that's linked in the order of service, both the paper one and the virtual one that shares more information about Midwest Access Coalition, as well as information on how you can get involved beyond plate share and take action beyond plate share. One update I wanted to note is that Midwest Access Coalition is participating in a rally on Thursday, September 28th at 5 p.m. downtown to raise awareness and protest against what are called crisis pregnancy centers, which are anti-abortion fake clinics that coerce people and shame them related to abortions, which is something super against UU values, both lying to people and using shame as a tactic. So there's information about how you can attend with other UU folks, other folks from 2U, if you are interested, and other ways to take action beyond PlateShare, including joining the Chicago Abortion Fund, Reproductive Justice Rapid Response List, and signing on to support the federal HEAL for Immigration Families Act, which would expand abortion access for immigrant families. Thank you for your ongoing support of all of our PlateShare recipients, and I hope that you have a good Sunday.
Now, I invite you to join me in reading our offertory words. The words are again printed in your order of service and are on the screen. This church is the community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm it and enable its participation in the larger world around us. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received.
That this week, our tech team are all our lay lead volunteers who are making this happen. And while we might have some bumps along the way, I'm so grateful that we have leadership from within the congregation who know how to make things happen and try things out. So thank you, gentlemen. Now, I want to invite you into the spirit of prayer or meditation. Let's start by breathing together. Try relaxing the muscles in your shoulders. Release the tension in your neck. Unclench your beautiful jaw. And just breathe into this space, this moment. We begin in thanks, always as we can. Thankful for the breath in our lungs, the beauty of our earth, and the strength of this, our beloved community. We hold in our hearts those who care for family in ill health, those who live with grief or chronic pain, those struggling with addiction or illness, seen and unseen. We're with you. For parents and teachers and all those whose primary spiritual practice is caring for children, we're with you. We pray for our neighbors in prison, for those who are struggling to stay afloat in the midst of poverty. We are with you. We pray for all those living in harm's way. Pray for our planet and commit to work that will lead us away from the harms of climate chaos. As war continues to rage, we pray that wisdom, compassion, and empathy guide the leaders of our world. May they and we be instruments of a just and lasting peace. Our lives are blessed by those who knowingly, with curiosity and courage, face their final days. During this season of high holidays for our Jewish siblings, wish them Happy New Year and an easy fast. Into this shared silence, I invite you now to speak the name of anyone you wish to lift up into the loving support of our community. With our deepest compassion, let us hold in our hearts those named and unnamed, those remembered and those forgotten. Let it be so. Amen, and blessed be. During our ritual of lighting candles of joy and concern, we want to continue to maintain our safety with one another. In the 2U sanctuary, in just a moment, you'll be invited to come forward, light your candle, and as you end your time of contemplation and candle lighting, you're invited to take some hand sanitizer that's available. For those at the Admiral, I invite you to come forward and take a pebble from one bowl, hold it tightly in your hand, putting your energy into it, and then knowing your joys and sorrows to be shared by this community, let it go lightly into the other bowl. For those of us on Zoom, join by sharing your joys and concerns in our chat window. And I will light a candle here representing your celebrations and sorrows. You may come forward. shared joys, celebrations, concerns, and sorrows close to our hearts. Jill, would you share our first reading, please?
Our first reading this morning is written by Reverend Alex Hayter Winnett. Good surprises can be fun, exciting, curious, or help us understand from a different point of view. Bad surprises can bring about intrusive thoughts, be alienating, or just generally be unpleasant. I will ask people, what is the purpose of this surprise? Is it to elicit joy and excitement, or is it to manipulate and bring about suffering? And then the follow-up question is, which would bring up more liberation? Which would bring about more freedom? Which would promote our mutual covenant? So if a story may have a bad surprise, how do we go about to lighten the load or prepare people for it? Is there some foreshadowing we can use? Can we start with the end and then go back to the beginning? Or do we just give people a heads up so they can be prepared for it? Some questions to ponder.
Thanks, Jill. Now, our next book might make you, or story might make you think we are doing Time for All Ages again. And in some ways we are. I want to introduce you to a book that might actually be familiar to some of you, but it's called The Monster at the End of the Book, starring lovable, furry old Grover. What did that say? Next page. On the first page, what did that say? Did that say there would be a monster at the end of this book? It did. Oh, I am scared of monsters. Shh. Listen, I have an idea. If you do not turn any pages, we will never get to the end of this book. And that is good, because there is a monster at the end of this book. So please do not turn the page. I'm gonna. You turn the page! I'm gonna do it again. Maybe you do not understand. You see, turning pages will bring us to the end of this book, and there is a monster at the end of this book. But this will stop you from turning pages. See, I'm tying the pages together so you cannot. You turn another page. You do not know what you're doing to me. Now stop turning pages. Ooh, sorry, Grover. There. I, Grover, am nailing this page to the next one so that you will not be able to turn it, and we will not get any closer to the monster at the end of this book. All right. All right. All right. Do you know that every time you turn another page, you not only get us closer to the monster at the end of the book, but you are making a terrible mess. This will stop you from turning pages. A heavy, thick, solid, strong brick wall. I would just like to see you try to turn this page. Do you know that you are very strong? The next page is the end of this book, and there is a monster at the end of this book. Oh, I am so scared. Please do not turn the page. Please, please, please. Well, look at that. This is the end of the book. And the only one here is me. I, lovable, furry old Grover and the monster at the end of this book. And you were so scared. The end. I told you and told you there was nothing to be afraid of. We'll return to Grover in a little bit. Let us hear our anthem.
Spirits made a place for you where everything is new. Spirits made a place for you where everything is new.
Love has made.
Love has made a place for you where everything is new. Love has made a place for you where everything is new. Grace has made a place for you where everything is new. Grace has made a place for you where everything is new.
So, I don't know about you, but I'm a bit worried about Grover. Now, I do love how cute this children's book is. I've read it to my nieces and nephews. I've read it to children I've babysat. It's my sister's favorite children's book. And my favorite part is when I can imagine Grover's voice saying, "You are very strong." It's fun and funny to read. And when I was thinking about this morning's topic, reflecting on trigger warnings and content warnings, I thought it might be an appropriate book for us. This morning, I want us to reflect together on what trigger warnings and content warnings, as they are also called, what they are and what they mean, what they might mean for us. And it's my hope that the Grover story might help us reflect on something serious while also being playful. And so we'll get to Grover a little bit later. It's been a couple of years since controversies around trigger warnings exploded all over social media. There were people on lots of different sides trying to explain why they were good trigger warnings and necessary, and others who believed that they were harmful at worst and foolish at best. There were also accusations that trigger warnings could lead to censorship and foster a culture of approaching one another with overly delicate hands. But what are trigger warnings exactly? According to the University of Waterloo Center for Teaching Excellence, a trigger warning is a statement made prior to sharing potentially disturbing content. That content may include graphic references to topics such as sexual abuse, self-harm, violence, eating disorders, and so on, and can take the form of an image, video clip, audio clip, or piece of text. In academic settings, trigger warnings often show up at the top of a syllabus or before a particularly challenging week's reading assignments. The intention is to give the person reading, watching, or listening to something a warning that the content they are consuming might be hard to deal with. This does not mean one should necessarily avoid the content, just that they might do well with a heads up that the content could bring up feelings that are hard. And so I gotta admit for myself, my opinions have fluctuated kinda all over the place when it comes to trigger warnings. For many years, as I've shared before, I ran an organization focused on meeting the needs of LGBTQ and HIV positive prisoners while simultaneously working towards prison abolition. For 12 years, everything that came out of my mouth could have required a trigger warning. I was always talking about hard things. Prisons are sites of sexual violence, especially for queer and trans folks. Prisons are places of white supremacy and anti-Blackness. The work I was doing was constantly rooted in experiences of trauma and violence. It became tiresome to always have to warn people about what I was going to say. I also found myself a bit resentful at moments. The people I was often talking about, they were going through current trauma, and they didn't get to prepare themselves for what they were facing. They simply had to survive, or sometimes not survive, the devastation of their lives. I didn't want people who weren't in prison to all of a sudden get this privilege of protecting themselves. Why should they get this special hand-holding? I wrestled, still wrestle, and it was hard. Though my opinion started to shift when prisoners started writing in and sharing that our monthly newspaper had become too hard to read. There were lots of stories and poetry detailing harm that people were experiencing inside. There often was not enough hope and care. Readers would flip through the pages and feel triggered by the stories that were being shared, even when they wanted to bear witness to their compatriots' experiences, even if they wanted to be in solidarity with people who went through similar struggles. The leadership circle of Black and Pink decided that we would put a disclaimer at the front of every newspaper and acknowledge that the content that followed could be triggering or bring up hard feelings for the reader. We suggested taking time and digesting just one piece before moving on to the next. We also worked to include more hopeful content in addition to that which highlighted the suffering of prison life. Now, it wasn't a perfect solution. We could not take away the pain of reading about the struggles others were going through. And we also knew that there were those readers who were not triggered, but rather felt seen. Reading the hard experiences others were going through reminded them they weren't alone. So engaging with the content gave them a sense that they too could have the strength to survive. Our solution was not perfect, but a practice in relationship. The relational aspect of trigger warnings is what speaks to me the most. The person in authority, the person producing content, the person sharing content, that person is responsible for thinking about the impact their language will have on those they are communicating with. Sharing hard things just to share hard things is not enough. What is the purpose? Who is being reached? What does it mean for the content to be shared? I noticed this dialogue coming up a lot when people were sharing brutal videos of Black folks being killed by the police on Facebook and other social media. I know I did it. I believed deeply that people needed to see what was going on and know the truth of police violence. What I was not thinking about, though, was the impact sharing these videos was having on Black people. As a white person, I was not fully thinking about the people I was reaching. I was privileging the needs of white people to learn about, witness, and acknowledge Black suffering, and leaving my Black virtual community behind, who were yet again being subjected to Black suffering. Why is it that so often to go about learning about racism, white folks do so at the expense of Black, Indigenous, and people of color? This is constant, yet unacceptable. The Daily News Hour, Democracy Now!, always shares a warning before talking about the violence of policing. They let listeners and viewers know if they're going to share graphic content about these extrajudicial killings. I appreciate the effort and intentionality, though sometimes I find myself wondering, did we not need a warning before the descriptions of war we just heard? No matter what one's opinion is about trigger warnings, they're always going to be imperfect. Now, I want to share a couple of longer pieces that have important perspectives for us to consider about trigger warnings. One is from a disability justice perspective, the other from a racial justice perspective. I don't think that they contradict each other, and I hope they help us have a more nuanced conversation. Eli Clare, disability theorist of cool dimensions, tries to front his book, Brilliant Imperfection, Grappling with Cure, by grappling with triggers. Trigger warnings, Clare writes, are an essential tool for self-care and community care. But how do they bear on listening and reading? Should one fashion a raft of kind of mental condoms? Or should all readers face their encounters, however painful, with word and image? I didn't know what to tag, Clare confesses. I could have tagged almost every piece of what's here with the trigger warning, but that wouldn't help us know how and when to take care of ourselves and each other. So let me remind readers that you can stop listening to or reading this book. You can read it fast or slow. You can yell, type, breathe, add your own moments to the mosaic. I want to let this tension exist without trying to resolve it. So imagine, those same guidelines at church. How might that work? Are we truly welcoming people to bring their full selves into our worshiping community? The question of tagging everything is one that comes up for me a lot. Anyone can be triggered by anything. There are big things that are clear, like those noted in the University of Waterloo definition of trigger warnings. And when marginalized people are telling their or our stories, it's hard to constantly have to stop and make people feel comfortable to hear those stories. And yet, that community care Clare writes about, that resonates deeply with me. We're having this conversation about trigger warnings because it came up in our Sunday Services Committee meeting. A desire for us to utilize trigger warnings for our services was requested because it would help at least one, but I think quite a few more, feel more comfortable and welcomed at church. We talk about hard things at church. We're supposed to, and we need to do it intentionally. When I got accepted into seminary school, I got 2 tattoos on my wrist. One reads, "Comfort the afflicted," the other, "Afflict the comfortable." The slogan was originally created to describe the work of journalists. Over the years, many clergy have come to understand it as an essential part of our calling. What happens, though, when we accidentally afflict the afflicted? What about all the times we bend backwards to make the already comfortable even more comfortable? Trigger warnings may not be perfect, And one of my other questions is, but who do they harm? Reverend Julian Soto offers a reflection on the reason they use content warnings before some of their sermons and writings. I know you might get triggered, that talking about the pain you've survived might bring it all back, like the sick kind of headache that only goes away for a little while when you take medicine, but still comes crashing back in. I know that talking about racism and the ways people try to control your body and mind to diminish you might cause you to remember all the other times nested like Russian dolls that this has happened to you. I definitely want to give you the choice of whether to listen to my story about that guy in the grocery store and the disgusting thing he said to me. I warn you of content as a political act, affirming that your identity, the way it connects you in the white supremacist system to sources of suffering, that matters to me. Your own judgment to care for your own heart matters to me. Assata Shakur says that it is our duty to fight for our freedom. It is our duty to win. In this way, I fight for your freedom. I fight for your healing moment and for you to have a chance to engage in the struggle, even if just for one more day. Your experience of my words, it matters to me a lot. We already do content warnings on a regular basis, but it's generally couched carefully within a sermon and not with the term trigger warning or content warning. I want you to think back to when we did communion on Easter last year. I spent a good amount of time in that service and a little bit ahead of time prepping us for the ritual. I acknowledge that many of us come from traumatic Christian backgrounds and left those spaces in search of meaning that would make us feel more connected, welcomed, and less disposable. To take part in a communion ritual could be triggering for some of us. That doesn't mean we weren't going to do it. It did mean I wanted people to have the experience of choosing how much they wanted to engage. We are sacred beings. Some of us would say holy, and we deserve to feel our full sacred selves at church. This doesn't mean we won't be uncomfortable sometimes. Discomfort is necessary for growth. Rather, in a theologically diverse space, in a church full of different people, we might be closer to right relationship. We might be more welcoming if we give people a little bit more of a heads up. Now, returning to Grover. He gave lots of warnings to the reader, and we just kept turning the page. Sure, Grover was the cute and snuggly monster at the end of the book, but what if he wasn't? Or even knowing that he was, what if Grover wasn't ready to face his own monsterness? It's great, as we saw during Time for All Ages, to have a mirror held up to us and see who we are. And there are times when we're not ready to face that. Maybe Grover was trying to protect himself from himself. We all do that sometimes. I don't want to suggest the book isn't adorable. It most certainly is. I just also have some empathy for Grover. He feels a bit embarrassed at the end, but none of us need to feel embarrassed by the things that scare us. They simply do. And we need to keep growing and responding accordingly. So you're going to notice some content warnings on Sunday services for a little while, at least. We're just going to try them out. They will be imperfect, and I am certain that some of you aren't going to like that we're doing this. But we're going to try it out anyway. And what is the point of church if not to learn new things, try new things, and then use new information to do something else again. There are a lot of ways that happens, and we can all get triggered at church. A song could remind you of your crummy ex. A reading could bring up feelings of abandonment from childhood. Someone in coffee hour might say something that hits you just wrong and hurts. And I believe that Eli Clare is very right. We could put a trigger warning in front of every piece ever created. And I don't believe that is the solution I'm trying to offer, but rather maybe we try engaging in that community care piece. Maybe we won't close the book when Grover is scared about the monster at the end, but maybe as we read his story, we can have some empathy in addition to our laughter. And so our closing hymn was picked in large part for the final verse. And so as we sing together, let us know that our heart's own songs will continue to be lifted up, celebrated, and honored, recognizing the fullness of who we are. And so I invite you to rise in body or spirit and join us in singing our closing hymn. It is number 360, Here We Have Gathered. member of our